nsfw Redditors who have gone to the emergency room due to a sexual accident, what was your injury and story? Not the ER, but I did end up at my gyno the next day after I got my clit sliced by someone's too long fingernail. PSA. Please keep your nails clipped and filed. Was doing the deed. No thrills, nothing fancy. Afterwards we're sitting on the couch and I feel crampy. So I go into the bathroom. And I sit. That's when I have the most painful cramp of all time. My boyfriend comes in to see me, full-blown hysterical tears. Calls my mom, who's an ER nurse whose motto as a child was no bones sticking out or gushing blood. You're fine. She drives down immediately and takes me to the ER. That's when I panic. Because if this cold-hearted ER nurse thinks I need to go pronto, it's serious. When we get there, it's slow enough that I pretty much immediately see a doctor, who just happens to be my mom's favorite coworker. Awesome. I then try to explain why it hurts and how it happened when my mom blurts out she was having sex. The doctor didn't flinch much. But I sure did. I wanted to die. Thankfully the embarrassment didn't last long because they gave me amazing painkillers. Long story short, I had sex. Had an ovarian cyst burst. Horrifyingly painful. Went to be ER doctor and my mom were buddies. Good times. Not so much an injury, but the treatment and aftermath did hurt a lot. Condom came off inside me and we didn't notice until after we were done. Both of us tried to look, or feel, for it and couldn't find any trace. I ended up in the ER and the doctor tried removing it with tongs. But it was apparently wedged right up in my cervix and the tongs couldn't reach. So this doctor with hands like Mr. Burns had to lube me up and get in there with his hands to yank it out. It hurt so much and I was completely mortified as my partner was sat next to me watching and was horrified. I now have a phobia of that happening again and it makes sex with condoms really awkward for me. I've told this story a few times. A sex injury literally ended up saving my life. My best friend at the time and I had a few drinks and tensions had been there between us for a long time. She invited me back to her room and tackled me onto her bed, where I hit my head hard off the bedpost. The next morning concussion symptoms started hitting me very heavily, so I went to the ER. On my CT scan they told me everything looks normal except for your old brain trauma. I have never had brain trauma. About a month later it is diagnosed as a brain tumor that I was not showing symptoms for yet. Had surgery a few weeks later to have it removed and at that point found out it was non-cancerous. So basically she dug my brains out. Few years ago with an ex-boyfriend of mine. We were fooling around and he tried to pin my arms over my head on the bed and ended up banging my wrist really hard on the headboard. It immediately started to bruise and I was scared it was broken. We ended up in the ER and I was asked all kinds of questions like, did I feel comfortable going home with him? Did he hurt me? Did he hurt my wrist? I wasn't expecting that. At all. They separated us at one point to ask me more questions about how I got hurt, which was super embarrassing to try and explain. I'm pretty sure he was scared to be too rough with me after that. And I don't blame him. Nothing was broken, just our egos. Sex was too intense. We went too many times that week. And she had a vaginal cramp that locked her down on me. Lasted about 45 minutes and it hurt so ducking bad. Not me, but a buddy who was a big football player at a big school in the South who called his coach in the middle of the night that he wouldn't make it into practice the next day. His coach asked why and he said I was ducking my girlfriend and I slammed so hard I broke her pelvis. According to him, his coach didn't even get mad but told everyone in film. For the record, Buddy is a 67, 315 pounds lineman and played ACC football. Happened 2 years ago. I was by myself one night. I had just bought a new toy with a suction cup on the bottom. Well, I was in my room, in the complete dark, because I live at home, and I didn't have a lock on my door at the time. I suctioned it to a stool I have that's shaped like a mushroom, and I was positioning myself. Well, I leaned forward very fast, and I face smack right into the end of my wooden bedboard. I saw spots, and was completely turned off. I hurried to put on clothes. I'm dizzy. and can't believe what I had just done. I look in the mirror and my cheekbone under my eye is huge and busted open. So I go to work the next day and everyone asks if I got into a fight. I lie and say I fell off the bed into my nightstand. I had a black eye for 2 weeks and I had headaches the whole time. Went to the doctor and they said I should have came sooner. That I might have given myself a concussion falling off the bed or fractured my cheekbone. Never followed up with an X-ray. I'm fine now. Haha. Not me. Got a call from my neighbor upstairs at about 2 a.m. I was the sup of the building and I thought there was an emergency. Well, there was. The poor guy had hired this lady of the night and in the throes of passion she came down on him in a weird angle giving, let's call him Bob, a penile fracture. Well, I ended up driving Bob and his companion a ride to the ER. She really was a nice girl. Stayed with him the whole night and couldn't stop saying how sorry she was. I ended up seeing her there again about 6 months later when, I guess, they told Bob it was safe to use his junk again. We ended up in a full-blown pillow fight nude after drinking wine on our first date. At one point she tackled me from standing upright and landed with her full weight, and mine, on my shoulder, instantly dislocating it. I was jumping around like a maniac screaming something to the extent of my arm shouldn't be pointing that way while having a full hard-on. She found this absolutely hilarious. I then proceeded to try and relocate my arm, Rambo style, where I just tried whacking it into her dresser. Pro tip: don't do that. Then we went to the emergency room where I got a mix of morphine and something else, which made me instantly sloppy, but pleasantly high, while a nurse and a doctor proceeded to pull my arm back into place. We then went home, proceeded to duck and realized then that it was 06 in the morning and I had to be back on site. She then drove me 75 kilometers in my company car to my hotel, as I was high on morphine and in no state to drive, and proceeded to sleep there while I was working. I most definitely took her out for dinner. She was into bondage, among other things. I bound her arms and we were having some fun when she tripped over her own feet. Falling without your arms to catch you can be terrible. So I catch her. But the way I catch her is bad. She's in pain. I'm freaking out. I get her unbound and take her to the hospital. Turns out nothing was seriously damaged, but her shoulder is banged up pretty bad. Between that and the bruises from the ropes, there are a lot of pointed questions and not so subtle insinuations. Longest night of my life. Well, after seeing all the stories of guys breaking their dicks, there's no way in hell I'm letting a girl get on top ever again. My husband is much bigger than me. I'm 56 and he's 63. We were having sex and he was on top. He was pounding me rather hard and in the heat of the moment I wanted to get on top. So I flipped and he naturally followed. But since I was on my side of the bed, there wasn't much room to flip to. I felt and landed on him. He penetrated my butt, ripped it a bit. That was painful for both of us. And he fractured his waist. Best thing I ever heard was from my sister. She came home from the hospital where she works as a nurse. Apparently a Russian woman came into the ER needing help getting something out of her. Turns out she'd been masturbating with Matryoshka Jayka doll, the Russian doll with a smaller doll in it, and so on. So she became a part of the Matryoshka. So a surgeon had to remove all the dolls from her lower regions. I was in emergency room with daughter and heard the conversation next curtain over. What I could see when people left and entered was a mom and a 14 to 16-year-old boy and girl. Doctor, how many are there in there? Girl, I don't know. 6, maybe 7. Mom, what made you put that many tampons up there? They are not made for that. Not really a sexual accident, but I thought I would mention it anyways. My GF and I are into chastity. About 2 weeks into my session in a metal belt, my appendix burst. The GF was in a meeting and didn't see my call, and I was unaware of the spare key location in our apartment. The doctors had to cut it off, and afterwards the two of us had a pretty awkward conversation, including myself being asked if I had any domestic issues at home. I assured them it was a fetish and I was perfectly fine. My parents had sex. Then 9 months later I was surgically removed from another human. I don't remember much about it. But it must have been bad. I couldn't walk for about a year and a half afterwards.